This is a demo of a presentation I'm probably giving next Saturday. Um, so let's see how it goes. And the conference theme is student resilience, so they asked me to sort of tailor my presentation to that theme. And I mean, good for them for actually, I don't know, taking the theme seriously. Most of the time they kind of don't care. But yeah, so it's going to be related to student resilience, but basically the main point is you should use basic statistics to analyze the grade output from Canvas and you'll find interesting things. Some of it's related to student resilience. So I'm going to talk about how to get a Canvas grade sheet, although I think most people know that already. The basic statistics that I use, and they are quite basic, and what I've learned from them, and this is the part that's most relevant for resilience. And I'm going to show you a Google Sheet that I have that'll do most of the work for you. So if you don't know, Canvas lets you export a grade sheet in what's called CSV format. I never see that aside from Canvas, but you can open it in Microsoft Excel or Google Sheets or the free stuff that comes with Apple computers, and I forgot what they're called, but yeah, what that app is called. But it works in any of those. And I'm going to use it with Google Sheets, obviously, like I said earlier. And once you have that, you can do all kinds of things to the data that you get and find interesting facts. So when I say basic statistics, I mean nothing more than you probably learned as an undergrad. If you went to grad school, or I don't know what audience I'll be talking to here. I mean, it's presumably mostly ESL teachers. So even if they did use statistics in their undergrad, they probably haven't done much with it since. So I think people will still recognize most of these terms and probably be able to define mean, median, and mode. But I mean, it's basic. It's not like the stuff you need R for or anything like that, right? And I mean, as with all statistics, there's a danger of overreading them. So, just keep in mind statistics that you get from a class of one class of 10 people are probably not that meaningful. So it's if you see something interesting when you analyze one class, you should probably do it for many classes to see if you see the same pattern. At my university, Southern Utah University, and I work for the American Language and Culture Center, we have 6 week terms, two per semester. So at the end of the year, I'll usually go back and look at all four terms and see if I see anything interesting across all of them. If I just see it in one, it might just be, a weird little hiccup. So, don't overread statistics and don't read too much into data from very small numbers of people. Okay, that's true for all statistics, I guess. So when I say basic statistics, I usually start with mean, median, and mode. Mean is probably the most recognizable and probably the most useful. It's just the average. So if you're looking at your class average scores and looking at many different assignments, you can even find interesting things just by looking at the mean. One thing that I found looking at this class from long ago, and I've anonymized the student names, not that you can see them here, but the scores for the first quiz and the last quiz are the lowest. I don't know why the last one is so low. I know why the first one is so low, and that's, well, at least I assume, because it's so early in the term, a lot of people still haven't added the class or are not regularly attending. That happens sometimes. So this, mean being low doesn't necessarily mean that students did badly on the quiz. It could also just mean a lot of students weren't there for the quiz. And you can kind of see that in the mode as well. So the mode is the most frequently occurring um, piece of data from the set that you're looking at, and in this case, 0%. So more than one person got 0%, and enough for that to be the most common score. That's also why the mean is lower than the median here, because the if you graph these out, the tail on the low end would be heavier than the tail on the high end. That's what's dragging the mean downward. And basically, it means that the first quiz of the semester or the term is sort of not that meaningful because a lot of people just miss it. So it's not necessarily predictive of their English skill. The last quiz again, I'm not really sure about. I don't know why that is, and I would have to do the same analysis across many semesters or many terms to see if that's always been true. And if I do, I mean, I might have to make some changes to that quiz. So I'm going to skip standard deviation, although it is useful for some things. I mean, you can see it down here. I'm not going to explain it, but the sheet that I'll show you later automatically figures it out for all the assignments in your course. But correlation I usually find more useful. Um, and the correlation that I usually look at is just between the particular assignment that I'm looking at and then their final grades. So this is the correlation between that same quiz and final grades. And you see that for all of the quizzes in a 6-week term here. So this quiz. Oh, you know what? I think I realized why this one might have a low correlation and a low mean. But anyway, let me go back to the first one. So, recall that this quiz had a low mean compared to the other quizzes and also had a zero mode, meaning more than one person got a zero, or zero was the most common answer, the most common score. And also, it's very loosely correlated with final grades. Recall that correlation goes between -1 and 1, 1 being a very strong positive correlation, -1 being a very strong negative correlation, and close to zero means there's almost no correlation. So, like, positive correlations would be something like ice cream sales and temperature outside, where you expect them to go up and down at the same times, right? And then score of zero means like, I don't know, ice cream sales and uh, average mortgage payment in the area or something like that. Two things you wouldn't necessarily expect to be related. And this is not very related. And that's really surprising because unlike, say, ice cream sales and mortgage payments, the WL quiz, the first quiz of the semester, is itself a part of the final grade, and you would expect people who do better on that quiz to do better in the class, but as you see, there's almost no relationship. So that tells me this quiz is not really informing final grades. And well, there are lots of things you could do about that, but it's very interesting and unexpected to see, right? And again, I wouldn't see it if I weren't using these basic statistics because you don't remember that kind of thing anecdotally, right? So, I'm gonna skip over t-test as well because I only have 25 minutes for this presentation. Although t-test is a very useful thing you can do to look at patterns in final grades. If I have time, I'll talk about one thing that I discovered with a t-test close to the end, but I don't think I'm gonna have time. Anyway, so the things that I find with these, sorry, these statistics tend to fall into two categories. Both are related to students' resilience and their ability to persevere throughout a whole term. One kind of assignment that I often find is what I call a barrier. Barrier just means it's a like cognitively expensive or like time-consuming assignment that doesn't correlate well with final grades. So something like I will take my students shopping, and they have to write down the questions that they're going to ask people at the stores that they visit. Like an assignment like that is lots of fun, and I think it probably pays dividends after the semester or in things that are not necessarily related to or not directly related to their English skill, but for all the time it takes, it doesn't really predict much about final grades. Like if they come shopping with me and they fill out the sheet saying they ask questions, it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to write good essays or something like that, right? So some of these assignments, the shopping one is not really stressful, but a lot of these assignments can be stressful for no good reason. Like they're not paying off dividends in pedagogical value for how much time and effort they take. And obviously, these things can be threats to student resilience just because they're onerous to complete. And students might see them and say, well, if I miss that, um, I don't have a chance to pass this class, even though the assignment doesn't necessarily predict their other skills or isn't really useful for figuring out what grades they're eventually going to get, right? So I call those barriers basically unproductive but difficult assignments. I also have a type of assignment I call an exit point, and I have another term, bellwether, and I don't know. I'm not meaning to coin a bunch of words with this presentation, but exit points, that terminology comes from when I used to work in community college, where They would try to reduce the number of classes that students had to take remedially because every new semester that a student enrolled in a remedial class was another chance for them to decide to do other things with their life and drop out of community college. And we called that an exit point. There was actually legislation in California community colleges to reduce the number of exit points just because statistically every exit point that students had was a potential chance for them to leave the whole system. Um, in my courses, exit points are assignments that are very predictive of final grades, even though they ne shouldn't necessarily be. Like they're not worth a ton of points, or they're very early in the term, and they're predicting final grades just because um, either a student who does them tends to do well on most assignments, and that's not really an exit point, it's more like a bellwether. That's why this other term is up here. And also they might predict final grades because a student who misses them might see a huge effect in their grade just because it's very early in the semester and decide not to persist with the course for that reason. And that's why I call them exit points because a student who misses that uh, assignment might just give up on the course, right? Might drop out figuratively in this case. So what I usually do is when I see a bellwether assignment that's not like I don't want to be that meaningful, I'll usually knock it down to just participation points. So instead of having, say, 5 points for coming on the first day and introducing yourself or something like that, which weirdly enough is one of the assignments that like regularly predicts final grades really well. I'll just not give points for that and have it be classwork, right? So if a student misses that one assignment, obviously they'll miss the classwork points, but they won't miss the speaking points. And at least in my classes, speaking is a large chunk of their grade. An irony of the effect of grades on persistence is that when students are very attentive to their grades in the first week of class, anything that they miss affects their grade a huge amount. So, like if speaking is 40% of their grade and listening is 40% of their grade and classwork is 20% of their grade, and they attend class every day, but like they forget to do a listening homework that might just be kind of perfunctory, like 2 points or something. If those are the only 2 points under the listening category, they're going to miss 40% of their grade at least in that first week because of that. And some students can get very discouraged by that. So, by avoiding putting points into these other categories in the first week, you avoid creating this sort of exit point effect. At least I hope so. And that's so coming back to the theme of resilience, that's something that's clearly related to student resilience. And I found this effect very, very strongly in the first week of my IEP classes. And again, my IEP classes are only 6 weeks. Obviously, missing the first week isn't ideal in any case, but sometimes students add the class late, and that still happens even in a 6 week term. And, they can get this feeling of being kind of buried by their low grade even though the low grade is based on like 5 points total for the week. Um, and they might just feel really left behind compared to everyone else. In online classes, which I also teach, and my online classes are full semester classes, so they're like 14 or 15 weeks, not 6 weeks. A lot of early assignments are exit points or maybe just bellwethers. It's sort of hard to tell with online students because it's possible that online students forget to do 1 week's worth of assignments and then feel so discouraged that they just don't continue, in which case that's an exit point. Or they're just the kind of student who misses things in the first week and that pattern just persists across time because they just are always that kind of student for whatever reason. Maybe they have a part-time job, maybe they didn't know they were enrolled in the online class. Could be a lot of things, right? So, in online classes, basically, in my online classes, what I have found, and this is sort of where the t-test comes in, is that if you divide students into two populations, one who misses no assignments in the first week, one who misses at least one assignment in the first week, the second group does like 30% worse in the class in terms of their final grade than the first group, even though assignments in the first week are usually not worth very many points, right? And I don't know if this is an exit point effect or a bellwether effect, but um, yeah, it's definitely something that I've found and I brought up with my administrators. Um, so another thing that I found is that extra credit. Do I have time to mention this? Okay, extra credit is probably less pedagogically sound than just giving extended deadlines for students who are missing assignments. So I don't know about everyone who's going to be watching this speech, but I usually give extra credit on the theory that if a student missed a day of class or one homework assignment, then it shouldn't like take their grade too much, especially if it's for an unavoidable thing, like they had to go to the courthouse, they had to go to the doctor, they were sick or whatever. But what I've often found is that, well, one of two patterns can happen with extra credit. Either it's positively correlated with final grades, meaning that students with high grades are more likely to do extra credit, which is not the theory by which I'm giving extra credit. I'm not giving extra credit so that A minus students can get A's, you know. Um, at least not, that's not the student I usually have in mind when I make an extra credit assignment. Or there's a negative correlation with final grades, in which case the students who are doing worse in the class are more likely to do extra credit. And that can happen if you have like a bunch of students who are like on the cusp of failure or something like that. And usually that's not just for one day's missing assignments, it's for a lot of missed assignments over the semester. But generally speaking, the extra credit assignments are less pedagogically valid than the assignments that they're meant to be replacing. So if a student missed like a quiz, uh, well, take an easier example to make up, like I don't know, a reading assignment from week 2, and it's week 6, and they realize they're missing these points and they want to make it up. The reading assignment is more likely to be aligned with the goals of my class than an extra credit assignment is. Extra credit assignments, at least again, for me, are sort of, I don't know, token, easy to grade things like go to Quill and complete 3 modules of grammar exercises, or Ellie, or like go to the supermarket and write down 5 words you don't know, or something like that, that aren't really aligned with the goals of the class, or at least not as much as the original reading assignment was. So it would be better to just let them do the reading assignment late, right? Rather than give extra credit. And either whether your extra credit has a very high correlation with final grades, which means the A students are doing it, or it has a low correlation or a negative correlation with final grades, meaning that like the C minus students are doing it, it's probably better to just extend deadlines rather than give extra credit. Anyway, that insight doesn't really depend on statistics to give you, but you know, the correlations are sometimes interesting to see for extra credit. And again, you don't normally expect to see negative correlations at all in a grade sheet because everything is contributing to the final grade. So if something is negatively correlated with final grades, that means something very strange is happening. Anyway, I have a Google Sheet that I'm going to share with you, and it will do a lot of these statistics for you. And I'm going to walk you through it right now. And then I'll show you a QR code where you can download these slides and then follow this link on your own. So the sheet looks like this. And this is the first sheet. The first thing you do on the first page is just copy and paste your um, Canvas grade sheet right here. Like click the first cell or all cells and then just paste it. This is obviously not a real class grade sheet. There's no student I've ever had named John Kerry or Biddy Birdie. But you know, it'll look very similar to this. So after that, you don't touch this sheet at all. You also don't touch the last sheet, which is just for calculations. Um, the second sheet lets you view only particular assignments, and this is where you put the search string to filter down the assignments. So if I wanted search for assignments, well, like discussion assignments, I'll put something like this. I don't put the D because I might have capitalized it in some assignments and not capitalized it in other ones. If I just want to see like video discussions, I'll put like IDEO, something like that. So video discussions. If I only want to see essays, I'll put like something like that. Hmm. Did I call them papers or apers? Yeah. So outlines, some papers that they had to grade on their own, some of their papers. Let's just look at the research paper. Yeah, research papers. So this is all the assignments that had eSearch in the name, like research with a capital R or lowercase r. And it'll show you the final scores for all the students in class, and those don't change no matter what assignment you're looking at. The mean score for only the assignments that you filtered for, and then the standard deviation in those scores. So you can do with that whatever you want, right? It's fun. Sometimes it's fun to see how well students did in a particular class, like This student didn't do very well on the research paper, but if I look for the mindset paper, um, yeah, he still didn't do very well. Okay. Well, so that pattern held for multiple papers for that student. Okay, the next sheet shows you the correlations as well as mean, median, mode, and standard deviation for all assignments. The first couple of rows is all assignments, and this is literally every assignment in the course. If you want to see like if a particular assignment is correlated with final grades, you can see it here, right? As again, as you expect, most assignments are positively correlated with final grades because they contribute to the final grade. This one has a very low correlation, and that's interesting. Okay. So the next batch of rows are only the high correlations, right? So it's the same assignments, but only the high scores here. So that's why all of them are highlighted green. Next batch of rows are only the negative correlations. And again, you don't really expect to see these at all, but you do actually see some here. So these are assignments that when the student did these well, their final grade was actually lower. And I don't know why that could be, but it's interesting to see here. Don't know what these errors are for. Usually that means there's not enough students who got uh yeah, not enough hmm? I don't know why, but it's not always an error. Okay, so I'll just leave it at that. You can also filter just by search string. So if you only see the assignments that are like, say, the research paper related to the research paper, you can enter a search string here and it'll filter just those assignments. All right, so again, you see correlations, standard deviations, modes. When I see a mode is zero, that means zero was the most common score for that assignment. Usually that's a bad thing. Um, Something to think about. I don't want to overread the statistics, but if don't know what I'll do about that. Anyway, so back to the slideshow. If you want to download the Google Sheet and do these statistics on your own with your own Canvas grade sheets, you can follow this QR code and follow the link and make a copy of that Google Sheet and make any changes that you want. I used to have one that did t-tests for you, but I cut those out of the latest version of it, so you can add those back. All right, let's see how long that was.